Hello, this is the third nervous system lecture. We're going to talk about the central nervous system, its structures and functions. So here is a picture of the brain. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and spinal cord. We'll start off by talking about the brain. This picture shows the four major regions that we're going to talk about. Each one is sort of color-coded. So you can see that the cerebrum, also labeled here as the cerebral hemisphere, is everything in tan. The diencephalon is this middle region. This is actually surrounded on all sides by the cerebrum. It's sort of embedded into the middle of the brain. The brain stem here is everything in green, and then we have the cerebellum. We're going to start by talking about the brain stem, and actually we'll kind of work our way up from the bottom of the brain to the top. So we're starting down here with the brain stem. There are three major parts. There is the pons, which is this sort of swollen area here. There's the medulla oblongata, and then we have the midbrain, which is actually made up of a couple of different structures here right along the top of the brainstem. The brainstem can sort of be considered an extension of the spinal cord because what it does is it helps to integrate all of the information coming in from the spinal cord and going out from the brain. So you can sort of imagine, this is our spinal cord down here, bundles of axons, bundles of neuronal axons carrying information into the brain and also other axons bringing information out from the brain, and it's all passing through this area. So the medulla oblongata, that's down here, that's the lowest part of the brainstem, and it really, it does merge into the spinal cord, so the two are right next to one another. And the medulla oblongata helps with a bunch of autonomic functions. So remember that autonomic are the things that are involuntary, things like heart rate control, blood pressure regulation, breathing, swallowing, vomiting. If you remember our very first lecture, we said that the central nervous system had the main function of being the integration center of the nervous system. And this area, the medulla, is actually an area involved in integrating a lot of signals coming in from the muscles and then coordinating the responses. So signals coming in from all over the body can be sort of integrated here, and the motor output can be sent from here for these very basic sort of life functions. The midbrain is mostly just tracts of nerve fibers. There's going to be two important functions that happen here in the midbrain that you need to know about. It is primarily a center for reflexes related to vision and hearing. So not processing visual information, not processing auditory information, but just the reflexes involved in your eyes and ears functioning. The pons is the bulging part of the brainstem, and this is important in breathing. Again, a lot of fiber tract, so we're just seeing a lot of information passing in and out of the brain through this structure. The cerebellum, which is back here, it kind of looks like a leaf in cross-section, is an extension of the brainstem. They really sort of go together. If you look back at earlier organisms like amphibians and fish, the cerebellum is much more sort of a growth off of the brainstem. So it's sort of helping with the integration of all of those motor functions. We have information coming in about which muscles are working, how they're working, where the limbs are. And so the cerebellum is coordinating all of that. And we can see here it provides involuntary coordination of body movements. So it's taking in information about where your body is, what your limbs are doing, and it's helping to make all of the muscles work together so that each muscle isn't working independently. They're all working together so that your movements are smooth and fluid. Okay, the diencephalon, that was the little portion that was right in the middle of the cerebrum on our first picture. The diencephalon is on top of the brainstem, and there are two major regions that we're going to talk about, the thalamus and the hypothalamus. In this picture here, the thalamus is blue, and the hypothalamus, which literally means below the thalamus, is all this purple stuff. So the thalamus is going to be kind of a relay and integration center for sensory impulses. So if you can think of all of the different sensory receptors all over your body, taking in information about vision, hearing, touch, smell, a lot of that information is going to go through the thalamus and then sort of get directed to the correct part of the cortex. So all of the information coming from your eyes needs to end up at the right part of your cerebrum to sort of be in the visual cortex so that that information goes to the correct part of the brain. The hypothalamus is an important autonomic nervous system center. And what that means is it's going to help coordinate and control many of the autonomic things or the involuntary things that your body is doing. The way that this happens is that the hypothalamus is actually sort of functionally related to your endocrine system. So the hypothalamus helps to turn hormones off and on. It does this because it's able to control one sort of master gland called the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is told by the hypothalamus which hormones to release. And so this little list of the hypothalamic functions are the result of the hypothalamus interacting with the pituitary. So it can help control body temperature, control water balance, regulate metabolism based on which hormones it's telling the pituitary to release. All right, so here is a picture of some of the regions that we've talked about. You can pause this video, try to fill in the answers, and in about 2 seconds I'm going to move on and show you the answers. So check your work. All right, the last region that we're going to talk about is the cerebrum, and the cerebrum is everything that's sort of around the outside top part of the brain. In mammals especially, the cerebrum is the biggest, heaviest part of the brain. And it's the part that has all of these sort of ridges and valleys along the surface. The ridges are called gyri, so those are the raised up parts. And then the grooves are called sulci, which are the indents. We can see here a couple of important sulci. Here's the central sulcus, which divides the pink from the purple regions. Here's a lateral sulcus, which is dividing this light blue section from what's above it. And we'll talk some more about each of these different regions. So we've got the deepest grooves, which are also called fissures, dividing the cerebrum up into 4 major lobes. They're paired, so there's 2 of each. The frontal lobe is everything up here in pink, and there's a right and a left frontal lobe. The parietal lobe, we also have the temporal lobe and the occipital lobe. If you remember back to the skeletal system, these are the same names as the cranial bones in those areas. Take a look down at this little part of the picture, and we can see that in a small cross section of the cerebrum, we have an outer layer of a sort of a darker color of tissue known as gray matter. This is the region referred to as the cerebral cortex, so it's just the very outside of the cerebrum. Everything below that is white matter, and that is mostly made up of myelinated axons. So the gray matter is mostly cell bodies and axons without myelin. The white matter is myelinated axons. One example of an important piece of white matter is the corpus callosum. We'll see that better on a cross-section of the brain, but basically it's going to be the white matter that helps connect hemispheres. Keep in mind that white matter, which is made up of myelinated axons, axons are sending signals. So the white matter is full of little pathways that are carrying signals to various places. The white matter is outgoing information, if you want to think about it that way. So it's everything coming from the brain cells. There are going to be a few areas of the cerebrum that you need to memorize. You need to be able to find them on an unlabeled diagram. And we'll just talk about a couple quickly, and then you'll have a diagram to fill in. So the somatic sensory area and the primary motor area, these are two areas right next to one another on the cerebrum. They actually are to each side of the central sulcus. The somatic sensory area is basically a lot of incoming information, things like pain, touch, temperature, and pressure reception. And then the primary motor area is sending impulses to those same areas. So controlling the muscles, sort of responding to the sensory input. In this picture, you can see over here in the top corner the cerebrum, and the blue gyrus is the primary sensory area. So that's going to be a lot of information coming in from the body about various regions. And then the red, which is right in front of the central sulcus, is the primary motor area sequence. And we can see based on this picture how much of each body region is controlled by the brain. So we can see that a large portion of the motor cortex is taken up with the face and the hands. So moving hands and face, you're going to have the most fine motor control. Similarly over here with hands and face, those take up a lot of the sensory area of the brain, so you're getting a lot of sensory input from those areas as well. Okay, study this picture, and the next picture is a blank one, so you may need to flip back and forth. I'll put this next empty picture up, and you need to be able to label it. Do this now in your notes, and also be able to do this for your test. Pause the video if you want to practice this. I'm going to advance the slide in 2 seconds. So here are your answers. Double check your work. Again, these are just regions that you're going to need to know and be able to label for an exam.